fiber friends? My name is Louis Boria, and I am so excited to have you join my knit along for 2021. This is the Respira Infinity Scarf knit along, and I wanted to say I'm super excited to have collaborated with Gary Boston and the Wandering Flock, who will be providing us with some awesome kits, and I'll get to show you one of the samples that I knitted up with for Respira. But Gary Boston had put out a call on social media, on Instagram, and was looking for designers to help him raise money for AIDS Lifecycle. So when I saw what was going on social media, I was super excited and I wanted to be a part of this. And so I reached out to Gary and said, hey, I have quite a few patterns that are ready to go out. Let me know if you're interested. And sure enough, he responded, and here we are. So the pattern is available on my website, brooklynboyknits.com, or you can find it on Ravelry under Respira. It is $10, $3 for every pattern sold is going to AIDS Lifecycle to help raise money for AIDS research. With that said, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about Respira and tell you a little bit about what we're going to be doing in today's video. So Respira is an infinity scarf. As you can see, it's pretty wide, and it looks like cables, but it's not. It's more like mock cables using left leaning twist and right leaning twist, and then the edges are Bramble Stitch. So today what I'll be showing you is how to do the Bramble Stitch, how to do the left leaning twist, and how to do the right leaning twist.
So the first thing I want to talk about are the stitches that I incorporated in Respira. And you'll notice that there's a lot of texture going on here, and it makes a great chunky knit, especially the colder days as we get into late fall and into winter. But I want to talk about the first stitch that we're going to be working on today, which is the Bramble Stitch. You'll notice that the Bramble Stitch is at the very bottom and then at the very top of the infinity scarf. And you can notice that it's three-dimensional and sort of resembles a bobble stitch. And what I love about the Bramble Stitch is that it's a mix of what I like to call the bobble and a little bit of lace work on the top. And if I spread that open, you can see that there's some lace work going on up there. Once you're done knitting the Respira, if you want to get even more texture to it, just block it, wet block it, and then make sure you pin it so that you're spreading out those stitches to show off the lace work part. All right, so we got the Bramble Stitch in the bottom and on the top, and then we start working on the left leaning twist and the right leaning twist. I'm going to zoom in here real quick to show you better. We're going to be working on the right leaning twist and the left leaning twist later on in this video. And then we got in between each of these sections, which is called wickerwork, by the way. This is the wickerwork stitch. Again, it's mock cables, just using right leaning twist and a left leaning twist, and then separated by eyelet rows. It's a quick knit, which I knitted up, I would say, a day, give or take. And this makes a great project for loved ones for the holidays, using chunky weight yarn. So let's get started on working the Bramble Stitch. Okay, so now we're going to work on the first stitch, which is going to be the Bramble Stitch. But before we begin, I just want to talk a little bit about the cast on that I used. Casting on is really, really important, especially when you're working in the round. If you're working on hats, infinity scarves, cowls, mittens, socks, sweaters, you always want to have a stretchy cast on. It's really important to have that stretchy cast on. I use the German twist cast on, which is my go-to cast on. If you're interested in learning how to do the German twist cast on, you can check out my other YouTube videos, specifically the Masalo Shawl knit along video 1. I explain how to cast on using the German twist cast on if you're interested in learning how to do that. You don't have to use the German twist cast on. You can use your favorite stretchy cast on method also. All right, so I went ahead and started on the first round in the Bramble Stitch, which is a purl round. And I'm going to go ahead and start on round 2. Round 2 says to purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, all in the same row, and then followed by a knit 3. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate the purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 in the same stitch. You'll bring your yarn to the front, and you're going to begin by purling. Bring that yarn to the back. You're not going to slide the stitch off just yet, and then you're going to knit. You're still keeping on that stitch, you're not sliding it off just yet. Followed by purl again, which is bringing the yarn to the front, and purl. Then you slide your stitch off. So you can see purl, knit, purl. And then the next step in this round is going to be a knit 3. Now, if you're a tight knitter, you may have a little difficulty gathering those 3 stitches together to knit 3 together. So my advice is try to be as loose as possible, especially when we're doing the edges of this infinity scarf. So I'm going to go ahead and knit 3 together. And I tend to be a pretty tight knitter sometimes, specifically now. And you can see I'm having a little difficulty here, but you're going to knit those 3 together. Okay, and then we're going to repeat. So we're going to go 3 in 1 stitch, which is purl. Bring the yarn to the back to knit into the stitch. Bring the yarn forward again. Purl. And now we slide it off. Followed by knit 3 together. And the little trick is you want to get your stitches closest to the top if you're a tight knitter. That'll help you get the tip of your right needle in through all those stitches. Slide that off. We repeat the purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 in the next stitch, which is again bringing the yarn to the front, purl, bring the yarn to the back to knit, bring the yarn again to the front to purl, and then we slide that stitch off, and we repeat the knit 3 together. Again, bring those stitches close to your tip. Be careful not to have them slide off your needle. Knit 3 together, and we repeat. Purl, knit, purl, slide it off. Just going to slide those up a little bit close to the tip. We're going to knit 3 together. We repeat the purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, purl 1, knit 1, bring the yarn to the front to purl again, slide it off. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the round, and I'll meet you for the next round. Okay, so I'm just coming to my last knit 3 together. And again, it gets a little tight, so if you're noticing that those knit 3 togethers are a little tight, that's pretty common, because usually if we usually do knit 2 togethers in many patterns, but so often you don't see the knit 3. So just be patient with yourself when you're doing the knit 3 together. All right, so I just finished this round, and my next round is going to be a purl round. So we'll just go ahead and start purling. And I'm just coming to the end of my purl round here. A couple more stitches to go. Okay, so that's the end of round 3. Now Round 4 is pretty much the same, except instead of starting with a purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 in the same stitch, we start off with a knit 3 together on round 4. And the reason why we're doing that is because we want to offset the bobbles so that they stagger. This is why you'll notice that once you continue. Now, you can already see just after 2 rounds, after 3 rounds, you can see that it's already forming the bobbles and that lace work that I told you about. So I knit 3 together, and then the next is going to be purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 in the same stitch. And just to repeat that, I'll show you: purl 1, bring the yarn to the back, knit 1, bring the yarn to the front again to purl 1, slide it off. And then we repeat the knit 3 together. And this pattern is pretty simple. It's, like I said, it's 2-row repeat for the most part. Here we go, we got a little tricky there. All right, knit 3 together. But it's a pretty simple pattern, and it adds really cool texture, as you can see. Again, we're going to purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 in the same stitch. So I start off with the purl, bring the yarn to the back to knit into that stitch, bring the yarn to the front to purl again, and then we slide that off. And your knitting is going to feel a little tight. That's normal. Again, be patient with yourself. If you're a tight knitter, this is probably going to be the most difficult part for you. And then we're going to knit 3 together. Off, and then I'll repeat this one more time for you, which is the purl 1, knit 1. Yep, see, I split my yarn there. I'm gonna purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 in the next stitch. So we start off with purl, bring the yarn to the back, we're going to knit into that stitch, bring the yarn to the front, and purl. And then we slide that stitch off. So continue working on that on the rest of the bramble stitch section. You're also going to notice that at the very end of the cowl, when you get to the very last edge of the cowl, we have to repeat the bramble stitch again. However, you'll notice that we're not going to do rounds 1 through 5. We're going to do rounds 1 through 4. So continue working in pattern, and then the next stitch I'll show you will be the left leaning twist and the right leaning twist. Okay, so I just completed the bramble stitch border section, which is the bottom section of your infinity scarf. And you can already see, just after 5 rounds of bramble stitch, it's already creating this beautiful texture, 3-dimensional bobbles. You got some lace work going in between those stitches. Again, when you're done with your infinity scarf, for a better look, I would say wet block your piece and make sure you open up those stitches so you can really see the definition of those stitches and that lace work. Now, before we begin the wickerwork section, I want to talk a little bit about joining new color into your work. Now, most knitters usually take the new color and they just pick up and they just start knitting with the new color like this. All right, so we begin, working on the new color. However, today I want to show you a little trick that I always mention in my videos on joining new color into your work. And instead of just picking up the yarn and knitting, what I don't like about that is that it creates this really loose stitch at the very beginning. So to avoid that, through the years, I kind of, well, I don't want to say it's my own technique, but I discovered just by simply tying on the new color with a single knot, making sure it's really tight, draw that all the way up to to the tip of your needle, and then you begin working with the new color. It just makes it easier to also hide that loose loop if you were to just pick up and start knitting with the new color. But by tying it to the back like that, it really tightens up your work and you don't have to worry about that loose stitch. So that's just a little quick trick or tip on how to join color work. So I'm gonna go ahead and begin the first round. So my next round is going to be just a simple knit round, and I'll go ahead and work on that, and then we'll work on the next round. Okay, so I just completed my knit rounds following the pattern, and we start off with round 1 in the wickerwork section, which is going to be starting off with a knit 1, and then purl 2, knit 2 to the last 3 stitches. And when you get to the last 3 stitches, it's going to be a purl 2, knit 1. All right, so following my sequence here, it's going to be purl 2, knit 2 to the last 3 stitches. I'm going to go ahead and finish off this round and meet you back at round 2. Okay, so now we've come to round 2 in the wickerwork section. And this is where the fun really begins. I love working mock cables, and I hope you enjoy working these mock cables as well. It's not difficult. The best part about it is that you don't need a cable needle for this project. So beginning on round 2, we start off with a knit 1, followed by purl 1. And then you're going to see RT. RT represents right twist. So for a right twist, you're going to skip the first stitch on your left needle and you're going to knit into the second stitch. So you want to be careful that you're not knitting into this stitch, you're knitting into the second stitch. You're going to bring that forward and then you're going to knit in that first stitch, and then you slide both those stitches off. Okay, so that's the right twist. Now the pattern is calling for an LT, which is the left twist. Now for the left twist, you're going to skip the first stitch again, and you're going to knit through the back loop of that second stitch. Bring the yarn forward as such, and then you're going to knit through the front loop of the first stitch and slide that off. That's your left leaning twist. Okay, so let's continue in sequence on round 2. It's going to be purl 1 and then knit 1. Beginning the sequence again, you're going to knit 1, purl 1, and then your right twist is going to be skipping that first stitch on your left needle, and you're going to knit through the front of the second stitch, pull that yarn through, knit through the first stitch, slide that off, followed by the left leaning twist. Again, you're gonna skip that first stitch, you're gonna move to the second stitch, but you're going to knit through the back loop, bring that forward, and then you're going to knit through the front loop of that first stitch and slide those 2 stitches off. That's your left leaning twist, followed by purl 1, knit 1, knit 1, purl 1, and then we're back at the right leaning twist. Again, we skip that first stitch and we're going to knit through the front loop of the second stitch, pull that yarn forward, go through the first stitch, knit through that, and bring both stitches off your needle. Now we're going to work on the left leaning twist. Again, we're skipping that first stitch, we're going to move on to the second stitch, you're going to knit through the back loop of that second stitch, You want to pull it out just a little bit, make sure that it's loose enough so that you can get through the front of the first stitch, knit through it, and pull both those stitches off your needle. That's your left leaning twist, followed by purl, and then a knit stitch, followed by knit stitch and a purl stitch. Once again, I'll repeat the right leaning twist. We're going to skip that first stitch, knit through the front loop of the second stitch, pull it through, knit through the front loop of the first stitch, pull that through, and then slide both those stitches off your needle. And another note I want to make here is that when you're working those right and left leaning twists, you want to make sure that you're trying to be as loose as possible, only because it'll make your knitting much easier. Okay, and then for the left leaning twist, we're going to knit through the back loop of the second stitch, bring that forward, knit through the front loop of the first stitch, and slide both those stitches off. Purl, knit, knit, purl. And you'll notice that after a couple of repeats, you get so used to it that you kind of memorize the pattern on its own. Okay, and then we're back at the right leaning twist. Again, just to explain, knit through the front loop of the second stitch, then knit through the front loop of the first stitch, slide those off. Now we're going to work the left leaning twist. We're going to skip that first stitch, move on to the second stitch. We're going to knit through the back loop of that second stitch for the left leaning twist. Bring your yarn to the front, knit through the front loop of the first stitch, slide those off. So you'll continue in sequence. That is the left and right leaning twists, or right leaning twist and left leaning twist. It's a great project. Anytime you come across these stitches, they make awesome mock cables. I love, the way it works out. As you work along on the Respira infinity scarf, make sure you tug each section after you're done, just to pull those stitches down. It's really important. I hope you enjoyed my explanation of the bramble stitch and the right and left leaning twists. Any questions, of course, you can always reach out to me on social media and or through my email, which is brooklynboyknits@gmail.com. For any questions, I'm always here.
Well, that's it, folks. I wanted to thank you for joining today's tutorial. Any questions you may have regarding how to do the stitches, you need more explanation, I always tell people reach out to me through email or social media. I'm always responding. More than anything, I want you to have fun. You'll notice that it's a quick knit, so this makes the perfect gift to give out for the holidays, for those special loved ones. Again, you can get the kits at the Wandering Flock. She has 2 kits available. This is what we call the cool palette, and then we have a more pinkish, rose goldish type of colorway, which you can also find on the Wandering Flock's website. Again, thank you for joining today's video. Again, the pattern is $10. $3 goes towards AIDS Lifecycle to help raise money for AIDS research. Again, have a great time, and I'll see you next time.